In 1968, astronaut William Anders looked out the window of Apollo 8 and saw Earth rising over the lunar horizon. He later said it was the most profound moment of his life. Not walking on the moon, not the rocket launch, just seeing our planet, small, fragile, suspended in infinite blackness. He called it a spiritual experience. Scientists now call what he felt the overview effect. But here's what's strange. That emotion, that specific feeling of being overwhelmed by something vast and incomprehensible, is one we were supposed to feel regularly. Our ancestors felt it almost daily. Looking up at unpolluted night skies, witnessing massive animal migrations, standing at the edge of canyons carved by forces beyond human timescales. Today, the average American spends 93% of their time indoors, staring at rectangles, scrolling through feeds algorithmically designed to trigger outrage, envy, and anxiety. We have optimized modern life for productivity, convenience, and dopamine hits, and in doing so, we have accidentally eliminated something our brains desperately need, an emotion so powerful it can reduce inflammation, increase lifespan, boost creativity, and make us more generous to strangers. That emotion is awe, and you're probably starving for it right now. For decades, psychology ignored awe. It wasn't considered a basic emotion like fear, anger, or happiness. It seemed too rare, too spiritual, too difficult to study in a laboratory. Then in 2003, two researchers named Dacher, Keltner, and Jonathan Haidt published a paper that changed everything. They argued that awe wasn't some mystical accident. It was an evolved adaptation, a biological feature built into human brains for a specific purpose. Think about it. 30,000 years ago, a human standing on the African savanna looks up and sees a thunderstorm approaching. Lightning cracks the sky, thunder shakes the ground. What does that human feel? Terror. Yes. But also something else. A recognition that there are forces far greater than themselves. Forces that demand respect, attention, and perhaps cooperation with others for survival. Keltner and Haidt proposed that awe evolved to help us recognize and respond to vast things. Things too large for our existing mental frameworks to comprehend. But here's the crucial part. Awe doesn't just make us feel small. It makes us act differently. And that behavioral shift is where things get really interesting. What actually happens in your brain when you experience awe? Researchers at UC Berkeley have spent years trying to answer this question. And their findings are remarkable. When people report feeling awe, brain scans show reduced activity in the default mode network, the part of your brain associated with self-referential thinking. In plain language, awe quiets your ego, that constant mental chatter about your problems, your status, your to-do list. It goes silent. But that's not all. Awe also activates the vagus nerve, which controls your parasympathetic nervous system. Your heart rate slows, your breathing deepens, stress hormones drop. In one study, participants who watched awe-inspiring nature videos showed significantly reduced levels of cytokines, inflammatory markers linked to depression, heart disease, and autoimmune disorders, just from watching a video, not even experiencing awe firsthand. Here's what should concern you. Chronic inflammation is now considered one of the primary drivers of modern disease. And one of the cheapest, most accessible anti-inflammatory interventions available? Looking at something vast and beautiful. Yet we've designed our cities, our workplaces, and our daily routines to systematically prevent this experience. Keltner's research revealed something that puzzled scientists for years. People who experience more awe become more generous. Not in some vague spiritual sense. In measurable, behavioral ways. In one experiment, participants were divided into two groups. One group spent time looking up at tall eucalyptus trees. The other group looked at a tall building. Afterward, a researcher pretending to be a stranger accidentally dropped a box of pens. The tree group picked up significantly more pens than the building group. In another study, people who watched awe-inspiring nature documentaries gave more money to strangers in economic games than people who watched neutral content. Why would feeling small make you more generous? Keltner's theory. Awe triggers what he calls the small self. When your sense of self shrinks, the boundary between me and others becomes less rigid. You feel more connected to the collective, more willing to cooperate. This makes evolutionary sense. Our ancestors survived through cooperation, and nothing encourages cooperation like a shared recognition of something greater than any individual. But modern life has flipped this equation. We've built systems that constantly inflate the self. Social media profiles, personal brands, curated highlight reels. We are drowning in self-focus, and our capacity for generosity and connection is paying the price. Let me tell you about awe deprivation. In 2020, Keltner published a book called Awe: The New Science of Everyday Wonder. In it, he describes a pattern he's observed across decades of research. Modern humans are experiencing less awe than any generation in history. Think about your typical day. You wake up in a climate-controlled room. You look at a screen. You commute inside a vehicle. You work inside a building.